Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're making a meatless Monday, and it was almost vegan, but then I realized that there's butter in it, so that kind of ruined that fun. But if you need to make it vegan, this is a recipe that would very easily be converted to that. You could probably just use more olive oil and don't use the butter, or just vegan butter. Either option, I'm sure it would not greatly affect the outcome. However, well, I will say I did do my own modification to make this vegetarian, because it calls for chicken broth and I just swapped it for vegetable broth. So we'll see if that causes any issues. I feel like it won't. I mean, I guess that is kind of probably a solid base flavor within this, but I'm sure it's fine. But what we're making today is butternut squash soup, and this is kind of kicking off my November videos, trying to do more Thanksgiving themed. Like, I was gonna do Thanksgiving dishes or like aspects of Thanksgiving dinner that I usually make. However, I realized that that would kind of get a little boring for me when I make it all again on Thanksgiving itself. So I figured this would be a good way for me to try and explore some new dishes, some new flavors, and I'm gonna try and make Thanksgiving items that I haven't made before. So like today's gonna be like butternut squash soup. I saw a recipe for like brown butter mashed potatoes, so that's not quite far off from what I normally make, but like I haven't done the brown butter version. So it's gonna be things like that. Like, I haven't done it yet, but they would be something that you could see kind of at the Thanksgiving table, and that's gonna be the theme for the month. I'm gonna obviously try and keep the whole like meatless Monday, some kind of baking, stuff like that going on. So I'm just really stacking on the challenges for myself this week. But I like a challenge. It gives a fun little problem for me to solve, get to do some fun research, finding recipes. So I'm for it. And that being said, let's run through the ingredients and we'll get into cooking some delicious, hopefully, because I haven't tried it before, butternut squash. Butternut squash, potatoes, olive oil, salt, pepper, butter, onion, celery, carrots, thyme, and vegetable broth. First up is a prep step. There's gonna be another one later on. We're splitting things out into oven and stovetop, and the oven just takes a little bit longer, so we're gonna kind of do those things, get it ready, get it going, and then we can handle the stovetop things later. For the oven, first up is peel and dice the potatoes. Easy, I've done that before, no worries there. The other part is going to be to prep the butternut squash, which I have not done before. So that's gonna be a new experience. I'm just gonna try and cut it down into manageable slices. Gonna try and peel it. It probably would be better to use a Y peeler, but I don't have one of those. So worst case scenario, I'll just use a knife to kind of cut off the outer layer. But obviously that's going to probably lose me a fair bit of this squash itself. So that's gonna be kind of a last resort if the peeler doesn't work. I don't know how hard or like thick the skin is on a butternut squash, so I'm hoping that it's nothing like spaghetti squash, because that is a pain to cut through. We'll see how this goes. I've not done it before, so what you see might not be the best way to do it, but we'll find out. If I'm struggling, you'll enjoy watching it, and if I'm good at it, you'll learn something. Either way, you win. Hope you enjoy. I mean, I feel like I handled it decently. Like I used the serrated knife to kind of cut through the beginning part just because using a normal knife can get a little unruly when you're dealing with a round object. So that kind of just gave me like a foothold. And the peeling wasn't as effective as I'd like. I had to kind of do a few passes over it, but it worked. It's kind of hard to get like an edge on it sometimes, but like I feel like the white peeler probably would be a good item to have there, but the peeler that I have worked. It just took a bit of time. The next step is, now that we have all that stuff prepped, we're going to season it with the olive oil, salt and pepper, and then we're gonna put it in the oven at 400 for 25 minutes. Now that the potatoes and the squash are in the oven, the next step is to prep the stovetop things. So that's going to be the onions, the celery, and the carrots. You know how to cut all those. Come up, you're good to go. Now that we have all those prepped, I'm gonna put them in my large Dutch oven, and that's because later on you're gonna have to add a whole bunch of other things in. So it's gonna seem like it's not very full right now, but it'll make sense in like 3 steps. So just throw those into the Dutch oven along with the olive oil and the butter, and we're going to cook those until they're tender. So it's like, I think 7 to 10 minutes, and then season with salt and pepper and the thyme. So I said in like 3 steps, it's gonna get real. And that was a lie. It's getting real in this step. The next step is to add the squash and the potatoes to the Dutch oven that we have, along with the broth, and it should probably fill it up. I mean, it's my largest pan, so hopefully it doesn't get it too full because I have no other options there, but it'll probably be quite full. And then we want to simmer it for about 10 minutes. The next step is to blend it up and kind of make it that like uniform soup consistency, and it calls for an immersion blender. I do not have one of those, so I'm just going to use a countertop normal blender, pour it in there, probably in phases, and then blend it up, and we're good to go. Now you have butternut squash soup. Here we have it. It's honestly, I don't blend a lot of things using my Ninja blender. Usually I use like the small little kind of like individual pod one, which is like a bottom blender. And I was worried that the blades, like their setup was gonna leave it being a little bit more chunky, but this seems quite smooth. So that was a nice surprise. But I mean, in retrospect, it would be very weird if Ninja designed a blender that didn't blend. So I probably shouldn't have doubted it so much, because they had engineers that probably spent a long time designing that thing. But enough about my analysis of kitchen tools. This bad boy. to me, looks quite tasty. It smells good. It has a very like thick feel to it, and in my head I was picturing it being like a little bit like thinner and like runny. So I'm looking forward to this. It's definitely gonna be a good kind of like cold weather meal, I feel. It definitely is very kind of thick. I don't know if, I mean, to me it's not a bad thing, but I'm wondering if I can kind of thin it out a little bit more and what that will do, because obviously that'll give me more of it, but I don't know if that'll like dilute the flavors any, because it has really good flavor to it, even though it's pretty simple ingredients, no crazy spices. It's pretty much just like salt, pepper, and thyme are the flavor hitters in terms of spice, but it all works very well together, gives a good kind of like flavor. I almost said, well, I guess it has like a mouthfeel to it, but that's more from like the texture of it, which is very smooth. So Ninja, you did your job correctly. I was doubting you, but bravo. And this was relatively quick and easy. The squash is probably like the only tricky part, but I'm sure now that I've done it once, I could probably do it again a little bit quicker. And in terms of using the vegetable broth instead of chicken stock, like to me, which maybe, honestly, maybe that helps a little bit, because chicken would kind of be a outside flavor in this kind of grouping. So maybe the vegetable broth kind of subtly brings it all together a little bit more. I'll have to make the chicken one sooner rather than later, and then I will probably have both of these left and I can kind of do a taste comparison. But overall, very tasty. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how like filling it is, because that's, I mean, to me, an issue with soup or anything kind of vegetarian is sometimes like fillingness, like unless there's like tofu or something like that in it to give it some oomph. But because this is thick, it might do it. Because I've not had this before, we'll give it a rating. I feel like this is a solid 4. Like it's good, but it's not blowing my socks off. Like I'm gonna come back to this as a go-to kind of simple cold weather soup, but it's not something that I'm like eating and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is life-changing. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Like I mean, I feel like everything I've made so far, I recommend that you should make it as well. I haven't had really any duds yet, but we'll see. Maybe I'll find something crazy to try this month. I mean, if you have anything that is Thanksgiving themed that you feel like I should try, I mean, like I don't want to be trying terrible things, but at the same time, it's pretty much been all like 4s and 5s. I think I had like 1 3. So, but maybe I'm just really good at picking recipes. I don't know. And on that note, bye Mom, still not dead. See ya.